Okay, let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Q&A with the LotRO team about housing and only housing. So feel free to start asking questions everywhere, and Scenario and Celestrata will try to answer them.
Didn't have to ask them twice. I'm already seeing the notification.
Oh yeah.
Questions. Hello, everyone.
Hello everyone. Good to be here today.
So maybe we do quick introductions for those that might be joining that don't know who
Yeah.
we are. My name's Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the Meshes boards. I'm a senior world designer for Lord of the Rings Online, and housing is one of my babies. I've kind of picked it up, and happily, I am no longer the sole individual trying to carry housing now. We have other people helping us, including.
Hi, I'm Serafina Brennan. I'm otherwise known as Celestrata. I'm actually the product manager for both Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons and Dragons Online. So I'm here because yes, I've been helping out Matt a lot with housing as of late. But I guess a little bit about my background, because it's a bit of a stranger background, is I started professionally as the community manager here on Lord of the Rings, and then ended up moving on to Tryon Worlds and then a couple other indie game dev companies. I was also the producer for Arcade for a little while, and rejoined the team as of last year, and have been excited to be back.
Feel like Lotro is the little game where everyone who's worked on it in the past at some point comes back to work on it again in the
All the
future.
time. All the time.
We've had for in fact with this expansion pack, one of our designers that had left for other projects has recently come back as well. So we're happy to have the band back together, even if it's just bits and pieces of the band here and there.
Yeah, I could also call out Mr. Rob Ty over at Animation coming back.
Mhm.
He was on Notro for a long time, and he just rejoined a month ago. So, or even less than that. So it's really exciting to have everybody slowly coming back. Otherwise, my background is in product, marketing, community, but mainly it's actually in psychology, and I do the psychology of play. Otherwise,
One of the things too that Serafina has been doing that has been super helpful for us is helping us understand the data
my background is
that
in
comes from
product, marketing,
player behaviors and purchasing habits and usage habits with things in particular for this interest with housing, but just with the game in general.
and economy as well, because Arcade, for those who know of it or have played it, is a very economic heavy game. So that gave me a lot of training in virtual world economics that I've been bringing over here as well.
And I think having that data too is something that's really helpful for us in the future as we think about what we want to do with housing and whatnot when it comes to making the case for, okay, we should try to budget for getting this kind of feature, that kind of feature. What are things that players are enjoying about housing? What are things that players are buying in relation to housing? All those sorts of things. And um, through a lot of her help as well, we made that transition from the housing writs to the homesteading coins, because I think one of the biggest problems that we had with housing, at least in terms of the currency associated with it, is you would have people stockpiling writs, and we are not producing neighborhoods fast enough to kind of meet the stockpiles that people had of that currency, and we needed new ways for people to spend that currency on things. But because of the cost of housing writs, it was really hard for us to easily use decorations or other housing features as an incentive to use that currency, because it's like, do you want to spend a writ on a single tree? Probably not. It's really hard to price something when the value of the thing you're trying to sell and the value the currency used to buy it are so kind of out of whack. So she and I worked together pretty closely in the beginning of the year to figure out how we were going to transition over to a new currency that has a bit more flexibility and usability for housing in general.
And create a stable plan that we could walk forward with, because it's not just like a one and done. I think, to really call out for folks, it really was, we came together and we talked it through, like, how does this year proceed and what are we looking for and what's important to us, in order to make sure that, not only are we making these changes, but then we're following up and watching what's happening with those changes, and making sure that things are landing in a way that are encouraging play, that is encouraging engagement, encouraging people to get involved, rather than changing things away from that type of stuff, or making it harder or making it more unfun.
I think one of the big changes we wanted to make too was encouraging people to be in game as much as they could when thinking about what they want to spend their currencies on. I think one of the challenges with the LotRO store, with housing items, anyways, and stuff in general, and it's why we
In
reworked
general. Yeah.
Lalia's market, is it takes you out of your experience if you have to go to a website to buy a thing that is then going to just immediately come back to you in game. And the intention of the Lalia's market remake was to better enable you to stay in your game experience while also looking at those things.
I think we're going deep into the weeds at this point. We should be answering questions.
There are plenty of them. So why don't we start in general? The first question I see there is from Manadlair. What's the status of kinships being able to purchase more than one kin house? That is a long-going thing that we have a task in for it. It is just a matter of finding the engineering resources to set us up with it. And I do want to say, you are likely to hear me say that as a response to a number of questions that we have here, because we have no shortage of ideas, but there are just some things that I, as a designer, cannot implement on my own. And so we need support from other groups in the company to help do that. And it's just a matter of getting their time to help out with that. I know we do have a strong interest in getting features like that implemented as soon as we can. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I know that's something we've also been, chatting back and forth about, like finding ways to enable kinships to have more like space ownership, things like that. So another kin house, obviously really cool, but it comes with a lot of considerations on engineering, a lot of space considerations on the server, things like that.
Yep. It was tricky enough to do that when we released Rohan Housing, we opted to make mead halls individual homes rather than force players to pick between their premium kinship houses. We've backtracked on that since then for future ones, for Erebor and Lindleby and Rivendell Housing. But it was a concern we had when we launched that neighborhood in particular, was not being able to have multiple kinship houses. We know we want to do it. It's just, we'll get there when we get there, and hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. But it all depends on who has availability to help out.
And right now, the engineering team is deep in the weeds on the guild system right now, though, which is news that we can sort of pass along, where it's not like player facing, but it's data facing, in order to support things for the future.
Next up in general, we have a question from Danaris. Could open world housing ever be a thing in certain zones? I've always wondered whether LotRO could do homesteading in post-war regions.
I have so much to say about open world housing.
there is a coolness factor to it, and there is a significant frustration factor to open world housing. We see a number of posts in threads in Discord, on the forums, in other aspects of the internet, like Reddit and whatnot, of people being like, when is house blah, one or more of them going to be available? And that's with an instanced housing system. Open world housing, where the availability of houses is even more constrained, is kind of a hard sell. I played Asheron's Call a lot. Open world housing was a thing there as well, and the competition for those spaces was not always friendly, I'll say. And I have concerns that open world housing would have some similar effects on the player community.
I would immediately concur. In ArcAge, then again, that what you're describing is ArcAge's housing system. We were open world. There were limited spaces on servers. It immediately became a fight in order to get premium space or space in certain sections in order to get certain crops for us, or just to enjoy the space, which definitely was an aspect of the game that was intrinsic to ArcAge. We pushed competitive play a lot, and so for us, having a competitive aspect of housing was a good thing. Over here, I'm not sure if I would be really all about that life, and fighting for something like that, because LotRO does not have that element outside of the Edenmores. So there are definitely many considerations you have to take around that, especially with open world housing. Again, another one is what happens when the servers change. And this is something I know from doing it in ArcAge. It was very, very difficult from a development standpoint to change the server architecture or structure when there are people's homes, items, storage, and chest on the ground. And then we had to whittle that space down and then had to say someone doesn't get their stuff. That's a hard thing to say to anyone, and that's something I never really want to say to anyone. So it's definitely something to keep in mind whenever you're doing like open world housing or housing on landscape. That is a problem when you're working with these types of structures.
Gary Newens asks, is it possible to allow purchase of more than one classic home per account? That's the same answer as the kinship home one. It's something that we would really like to do. It is something that is on our to-do list, but it needs engineering support to make it happen. So it's just a matter of having those resources available. I think the 64-bit servers are great for us, but they didn't come without their own growing pains, and that means engineering is really focused on making sure that those environments are as stable as possible, and we're getting the data out of them that we need first and foremost. And then after that, that's when we start thinking about, okay, can we get some time for getting our housing system some love? Let's see. Angel Wings says, would it be possible to purchase previously available items that were in older LI reward tracks, perhaps in Lalia's market, or even recycle previous LI reward tracks to make them available? I think both are options to consider.
Yeah.
I don't have anything more to say beyond that. I was actually had the thought about the LI reward track items in Lalia's market. I was thinking about that a little bit yesterday and what that kind of implementation would look like. But I think like those are both things that are very considerable by us.
Yeah. And it's definitely conversations like I've absolutely already had where not only the ally tracks, but I think there are a few more areas of the game where like unreleased items, I think fall into this category too. Where we want to bring those out and find a home for them. And just it's a question of where does it go and why does it go there? And then just getting a plan together in order to sort of bring that out and be able to support it over time. It is something that we definitely want to do because I think locking those rewards off kind of isn't exactly a fun experience. And making sure that they're available is important. But figuring out a way to do that in a fun manner, that's either just making it available in the store, or Lalia's Market, that's one method, but also seeing if we could do something maybe a bit more interesting with it is definitely another.
I'm going to switch over to housing hooks now and take a look at some of the questions there. We've got a few. Elrandor asks, in a previous Q&A, I think Scenario said that introducing lighting hooks in classic homesteads was considered. Is there any news in that respect? It is still being considered. My plate never gets less full, so it is hard to find time to bop in to retrofit things like lighting hooks, fence hooks, ambient music, ambient environment, those sorts of things into previously existing neighborhoods, especially since some of those neighborhoods were not built with some of those features in mind originally, particularly thinking about things like the ambient music and ambient environment hooks, where especially in the original neighborhoods, none of those properties are square, which makes placing those volumes in a way that doesn't impede on other people's properties a little challenging.
Mhm.
Angel Wings says, would it be possible to purchase extra hooks through LotRO Store, even Lalia's Market? That is another thing that we want to do. I have
Oh yeah.
a prototype for hook packs in the test estate, which if you pop into Borer, you can take a look at it. The idea being that, you know, through some sort of mechanism to unlock a certain set of hooks on a property, you'd be able to get access to some additional hooks. It is something that we want to investigate. Again, it is a, you know, I can only go so far with the prototyping of it before I need engineering support for it.
Yeah. And these are like, I think, just to even comment on hooks more broadly, you know, like hook types or like more hooks or just like what are we doing with hooks is all stuff that we brought up this year, as a matter of fact, you know,
Yep.
like to really get into with the engineering team and say like what are the things we can continue to do here in order to extend the system further or perhaps make it a bit more flexible, because hooks in and of themselves, I think everyone here is going to know this intrinsically, they're restrictive. It's also difficult from like a development standpoint when I'm sitting back here and we're looking at all the items. Sometimes we're saying to ourselves, we don't want to give you this tiny little item because then it's going to take up an entire hook and that sucks. And then you have to make more bespoke sets to make them more interesting, but they could be bigger and the footprint might not fit your house, and that creates a whole slew of problems. So being able to change that up a bit is something that's, I think, important.
The ideal would be for me to steal the engineering team for a year and just task them on housing. The
But
reality
we
is
all
that
want to steal the engineering team.
that's not going to happen. But I think, you know, Alan, Orion, and I have said on occasion streams that like we've got ideas, we've got a long game that we're building towards. Some of which includes things like hook packs, additional houses, new housing types, new
Mhm,
gameplay to go into housing. So there's
mhm.
a lot of stuff that we want to do. We just have to make sure that we plan it smartly, design it smartly, and implement it smartly.
And include the right people to make sure it's designed and implemented smartly so that you know you have a great experience while playing it versus, because I think we sometimes skip over like some things in the game are made by almost the design team because the engineering team gives them the tech or the tools to handle it. But not everything can do that, and that some pieces of the game have to be made by the engineering team themselves, and they are a shared resource amongst all of SSG. So finding time is always difficult because everyone has an engineering idea.
Ninaris asks, what's the feasibility of getting tilt rotation so that you could have full 360 rotation on all hooks and scale options on hooks?
Yeah,
Again,
yeah. See, cool stuff.
those are both things that I have tasks, you know, incubating on. You know, we
Yeah.
have the requests in, and you know, we like the ideas. We want to give as many opportunities for expression as we can in the housing system within some limits. And rotation, free rotation, feels like a very good way to give even, you know, old decorations new life by allowing players to use them in ways they couldn't have previously used them.
Mhm.
Yao says, living in a dream question, universal hooks equal the way to go in the future. I think universal hooks, as we consolidate hook types they get closer and closer to universal hooks.
Yeah.
Universal hooks were created primarily because I needed a way to simulate interior hooks in the exterior of error bore housing. And they kind of represent a like consolidation of all of our hook types. Over time, we've kind of like consolidated this hook type, that hook type, this hook type, that hook type into down. So it's like originally we had what, a half dozen styles of like furniture hook types, and over the years I've kind of like combined them and combined them and combined them, and honestly probably like uh, wall and floor hooks may become a part of that at some point in the future as I have time to do the work and safely verify that I didn't explode anything.
Exploding something, always a potential.
Oh yeah.
There's this much code around here. Yeah.
And then Mugtor says more yard hooks, able to lower yard hooks. So the classic style of yard hooks are not likely to change. What you're likely to see more from us is trying to leverage mobile hooks in future neighborhoods so that you have a bit more vertical flexibility in how you place things. Those hooks do come in the constraints of needing to have a range on them so that you can't zing them out of your property. But there is a concept that we have a request in for that would help better limit where hooks can move, and then if we were to get that feature, then it would be a lot easier for us to add in more mobile hooks or potentially even convert standard yard hooks into mobile hooks. All right, let's hit Lalia's market.
Ooh.
Questions that we can both tackle pretty easily.
Indeed, yeah.
Elrandor says, are all the decoration items available in the store in the market? If not, will it be the case in the future? I'm pretty sure I got every housing decoration item and every cosmetic item that was on the LotRO store into Lalia's market.
Yeah, you got the majority of it all there. I'm pretty sure. There are only some things. Yeah, Property Guard pack is one. I think there's only a few that are outstanding.
There was some stuff that did account-wide things that I didn't bring over. I think there was a Rohan pack or something. There was a it was the River Hobbit bundle, which has a bunch of River Hobbit housing decorations. I didn't bring that over because it also has account and content connections to it as well. But pretty much anything that was like an individual deco, for the most part, is there. So Yao asked about the reward track items as a potential for there.
Could be. Yeah.
I think Lalia's market, we want it to be a living market. We want to make sure that there are new things coming into it somewhat regularly, and that if there are certain things that players are really requesting, that we can kind of make that a home for those things. We did that initial launch of like rug bundles and whatnot, and we had a lot of people say like they love the bundles, they really wish they could get all the sizes per style as opposed to all the styles per size. And so we've updated that. We actually had a meeting last week going through the list of housing items that have been generated based off of deco items that were created for the expansion pack, and how we want to parse those out through different reward vectors, whether that's crafting, rep, furnishers, or Lalia's markets as individual items or bundles. So we want to make sure that we're a bit more thoughtful in how we deliver our housing decorations, and we also want to make sure that Lalia's market is a space that you feel like you can come back to fairly regularly and find something there for you to check out.
Yeah. And like I think when we were talking through Lalia's Market earlier this year, it's come a long way from what the initial idea of it was. Like when I was a CM, the initial idea of Lalia's Market was it is just a place that shows off the MTX items and that's it. And it's now evolved into a place of, well, no, you do more stuff there. You have the bank, you have the vendors, you have other options. Because in my opinion, it should be more of like an in-world experience. Like it is a piece of the world. It is located in Bree. It has characters of the game in there. So it should feel like a piece of the game more than just like an MTX experience. And the idea like Kreia brought up, love the idea of rotating traders in market in Lalias. Excuse me. That could bring in items from afar. And that is again another one of those ideas that we actually actively talked about during the revision of Lalia's Market, in order to like bring a bit more of a rotational life to it, in order to make it feel like it's changing and evolving over time. But also it's showing you things that you normally wouldn't be able to get on a website or in the LotRO store or somewhere else. That you can like rather see things in the full 3D, walk around it, consider it on your character rather than just see a photo of it.
I think we have a challenge with housing items is in that we don't really have a way to preview those items as
Yeah.
easily as we do cosmetics and mounts and whatnot. The initial implementation of the housing portion of it, anyways, is I just took the artwork for a lot of the decorations that we had and scaled those down and put them there.
Yeah.
We had originally talked about moving like the curator and other rotating barter NPCs that are out at the fountain, bringing them into
Builder.
Lalia's Market as well. We stepped back from that just because we know people are so used to going to the boar fountain for those things that moving them could be confusing, and throw people off of their like normal play cycles potentially.
But there's also like, that was part of it, but also like maybe like the supporter packs or other things that we don't normally preview so openly to be previewed there. But also in terms of the housing stuff, that was the initial idea behind all of it. And it was to see like the housing components and bits and bobs in a 3D space. And what's coming next for Lalias? We will find out. I'm excited.
Yeah, like I said, we've got a bunch of
ideas. Just need to cut it down to what that next release is going to be.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of package items that I need to pull together with some really cool assets in them. So
just had a meeting on it.
And we're gonna have another one next week or the week after to go through the stuff that we didn't get to. So
yeah. Will there be a stable to see the War Steed sets? There is a stable, and we talked about the horses. That's an interesting idea. Can't say anything quite yet, but it is a direction that we've opened at a few points. But also the War Steeds, another problem with the War Steeds is that they're restricted to one area, and they get a lot of play, but not always.
The common component is anyways. I know a lot of people use their war speeds for the fastest point-to-point movement possible, but
we
I'm gonna bounce up to decoration items.
Deco
we have going in here. We got a lot of people, I think, asking for very like specific and individual things. So years ago on the old version of there was a thread that had a ton of player requested items, whether it was individual entities or settings that we as the world design team had like done up and looked really cool, and the players are like, we would love to have this. And then I go to look at it and it's like, oh, that's actually 20 different objects that we pushed together to make something. So that thread, I've captured all of the information that was in that thread, and it's in a spreadsheet. And just as there is time, we kind of go through and pick things here and there out of the thread, out of that spreadsheet that would make for good housing items. Some of which have shown up in the last like couple of years, whether it's through reward track stuff, through region barter stuff, or even in Lalia's market. So those items we're still pulling through those. I know there is a lot of interest and demand in more complete foliage sets, whether that's trees, bushes. We have a lot of different sets of those kinds of things, and those would be good opportunities to do either reward tracks or bundles or have them be festival rewards. So I would say for a lot of the entities we have in game, say if and more of a like when we have the time to pull that together. M from Glamdring asks, is there capability of creating a blank mannequin where you can dress in a cosmetic outfit of your choice? Even if the look is locked in, it would be fun to showcase outfits.
That's always a cool idea. Yeah.
we kind of have the start of that with the mannequins
Yeah.
in Lalia's market itself. It doesn't have any sort of UI attached to it so that it can be easily customizable, but at least the framework for building such a thing exists. The idea with like outside of Lalia's office itself, there are a few mannequins standing, and those mannequins are supposed to rotate to show off what the current like loot box set is, for example. Really what would need to happen for that is we would need a good UI that would like pop up and give you slots basically for each spot, and then that would adjust the appearance of those slots. We even talked about doing stuff like that for housing objects itself. And I would imagine, so you could have like a table that has like n number of slots in it, and you just drag certain deco items into those slots, and those deco items would appear on those slots on the table when you hook it. So they're very similar concepts, and I could see it being not too difficult to translate the implementation of one into the implementation of the. He says as not being an engineer or a tech artist at all.
I do know because we had them in our case. They're harder than you think they are. Doing like the display mannequins, I was a little surprised at how much stuff went into them. But yeah, it's always great that we have like the basic bones of how to do that here. We can just extend that.
Mm-hmm. Angel Wings asks, I'm not sure if this belongs in this category, but is there a possibility to allow colors, wall paint, floor paint to be applied to decorative walls and floors, while we're able to change wall and floor surface colors, and any additional wall floors added remain the original color? That is probably one of my biggest decoration requests, because it is actually a lot. It's not a ton of overhead, but it is not inconsiderable to go through and make decorative walls and floors for every single like wallpaper that we have. My ideal would be that we have a world where instead of a set of decorative walls and floors for every surface type, and we have blanks. That's just a blank decorative wall, blank decorative floor, and any other variations that we want for those. It could be variations in sizes for decorative floors, whatever variations we want to make. And the idea being that through some sort of like die style interaction, you can just double click a wallpaper, apply it to a wall, double click a floor surface, apply it to a floor, do the same with the wall, with the dies to change those colors so that it does that. Those do have the drawbacks of like then those stackable. I'm not sure if they are stackable now. And things like, they probably wouldn't be able to go into carryalls, or at least they couldn't go into carryalls and maintain their customizations. So pros and cons to those sorts of things. It is something that we're thinking about. It is something that I would love to bend the appearance system to my will to do, because it would make my life a little bit easier as well. Will there be more combination items available? The Umbury furniture in previous LI reward tracks were wonderful because they were large enough to fill spaces and did not take up too many hooks. I would love to do more of those as well. Those we need art support for because I can make a grouping, a setting, and have it look cool, but we need someone from the art team to actually take that setting and turn it into a game object, a game entity, as opposed to being a collection of game entities. So
I'll just say it. Yes. What is it? You'll see.
there are a lot of things that you all are wanting that we also want.
We do want that. Yeah. And not only do we want it, our team wants it too.
Could it be possible to implement the same system for pets or horses for housing items? I'm not sure what that means.
I think for showing off, like you slot your pet, you slot your horse, and they show up in the house, or they show up in the stable.
Oh, okay.
Which again, another one of those we've talked about.
You have the hitching posts. You can get so you have your steed halters and your hitching posts. So I'm not entirely following that question, but can we get a cosmetic that switches the style of door the houses use? Hobbit doors. So that is likely to not happen. Because often those styles of doors are very physically different from each other.
Doors. Yeah.
I could see a world where maybe you switch the texture on a Hobbit door to be more reminiscent of a Dwarven door, but not wholesale swap out Hobbit door for Dwarf door.
If there's one conversation you can open up that's a can of worms in any game design setting, just ask about doors to anyone. You will get a very long answer.
Alan was having a hard time with a door issue a couple weeks ago where a door that he had placed was working fine in one spot, and he copied and pasted exactly the exact same properties into another spot, and it just wasn't working.
It was the exact same thing. Yeah.
Doors.
Doors, how do they work? We don't know. We make games. We put hats on head.
Could we get some indoor water items like the round gun door and make all our bath plans happen? Water is a tricky thing to do because usually, from a standpoint, a fountain, from a world design, when we go to place it, something like that, a fountain and the water volume for that fountain are two different things. And in order to have actual water-like properties, that water volume has to be rectangular in shape. We can make round-looking water volumes, but they won't have water properties. So you wouldn't get the ripples, you wouldn't float, those sorts of things.
Water style floor. Ooh. All
right. There's a lot of questions about deco. So we got
yeah.
I know the Arnorian Estelden items have been made into deco items. Now I just need you to add them to Lalia's. Do you think you guys will be adding more of those types of deco to Lalia soon? I would say our deco direction for what new things we introduce is more likely to lean towards what we're doing with our current narrative more so than going back. If there were ever to be a update that was like a fill in the gaps region that covered some of those spaces, if we did a fill in the gaps that introduced Rudar or something like that, that's an opportunity for us to go through and do deco items for that, because it's always good to have reward synergy with the content that is being released. Would it ever be possible to have orchards for huge yard hooks or fruit-bearing trees that we would collect from every so often? That is something that Alan and I have talked about for our greater gameplay loop interests with the housing
Yep.
system.
Like having something that's a wider field.
Rasp asks, any chance that there'd be more housing-specific quests or adding more decorations into the pool? Housing-specific quests, we usually try to do a intro quest to a neighborhood, so that it kind of like gives you a tour of the neighborhood. Outside of that, I know we've done trick-or-treating and whatnot. That leans more towards like if a designer wants to do something with a festival sort of thing, that's an opportunity for that. As far as adding more quests into the quest rewards pool, that is a portion of what we were talking about in our meeting earlier this week. Like what quests or what items do we want to earmark for quest rewards versus, the other reward vectors. So I think in part because I've figured out a process to turn our static world decoration items into individual decoration items into housing decorations. I've kind of like worked that out so I can be pretty prolific. I think I came up with I think the current list for what we're working on right now is like 530 housing decorations, not all of which will be a part of the expansion pack, but a good chunk of them will be. Earmarking some of those as quest rewards.
Yeah, because I think also on that front, like there are times when we were talking about this in the meeting where the designers themselves who are making those quests actually request a housing item or a specific reward for that quest. So there's also that happens as well.
Let's see. I'm gonna bounce down to neighborhoods because I know we've haven't given neighborhoods a lot of love in this conversation. Elrondor says, can you confirm that Rivendell Homestead will allow vertical movement for yard hooks? What do you tend by limited? Usually when I say limited, so there are for mobile hooks, which is the hook type we want to use for Rivendell housing. Mobile hooks have 3 axes of movement limitation: up, down, left, right, and vertical, or north, south, east, west, vertical. And with those hooks, we have to be careful about the north, south, east, west movement of the hook, just so that the hook does not leave the property of the owning player. As far as vertical goes, I think I'm still nervous about letting players just rocket decorations high up into the sky. In Erebor, it was kind of a necessity to allow that. In the stately houses in Lindleby, I was comfortable with that because they were kind of off in their own spaces. With Rivendell using the mobile hooks everywhere, I just want to be cautious about not letting people push things too high up into the sky to create weird stuff, or to allow them to use it to like circumnavigate things that they shouldn't be able to circumnavigate.
I guess
What's
the next question? Yeah, what's the biggest design challenge? What is it, Matt?
Well,
Yes.
I'm not the designer on it. One of our other world designers who hadn't built a neighborhood since the original neighborhoods were released. He wanted to take a stab at it. As everyone does, we got busy. It was not, housing has always been kind of, we do this on the side while working on and when the housing neighborhood is ready, it's ready. So I think he was still, I think his biggest challenge was kind of wrapping his head around how much the housing had changed since he first worked on it years and years and years ago. Probably a good like 15, 18 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the biggest challenge for him initially. The thing that we're both he and I are kind of like struggling on a little bit right now is finding the best way to have the interiors of the houses be representative of the exteriors. You know, the right feel like they have the right kind of shape because the original neighborhoods, particularly the elf neighborhoods, the interiors really don't line up with what we put on the landscape, like, and it bugs us. So we want to try to make sure that, you know, we have an interior that has a footprint that feels reminiscent of what the exterior is. And that's tricky when you have something like elf housing and all of the structures are fairly round. If they were square, no problem. Round makes it difficult. When can we expect it to be released? Will there be stately houses? Um, we have some high-level ideas for when we want to target release, but it will really be dependent on when we can wrap up development and get it properly tested. There will be no stately houses. They're all going to, the biggest difference for the houses are going to be location, less so than features. And prices have not been decided yet.
Yep. Still a little too far out for that, but as we get closer, we'll definitely be more communicative about it.
The tricky thing with pricing too is we always kind of use a template for price when we start working on it. And it goes to Palantir, it goes to Boror, people see those prices, and they either get like sticker shock because it's a templated price that isn't the right price, or they get excited because the price is lower than they thought it was going to be. And we have to make sure to remind them that these numbers are still subject to change until it goes live. You know, don't treat any of the numbers as final numbers.
So ambient lighting has been an issue with classic housing neighborhoods. Those houses tended to be very dark. Is it possible to include ambient lighting in the future for these neighborhoods and even with Cape neighborhoods? Asks Angel Wings.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in one of the other sections as well. It is a time question. Ambient, you know, the lighting hooks can go into those neighborhoods. Is I need the time. How many
How many?
houses?
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
How many houses will there be in Rivendell Homestead, of which so there are going to be 3 house types in Rivendell, the Rivendell neighborhood. There will be like a basic house, 2 basic houses, 4 deluxe houses, and 1 kinship house per neighborhood.
Nanaras asks thoughts on getting some cozier and apartment style housing. Must admit, I don't know too many players who are keen on the big mansions, especially in the RP community. Yeah, that's also something that I think has come up a few times, and is of interest. I'm not sure what that would quite look like yet, but I know like having a more like a lower price point here or a lower and more affordable like sort of starter space could be very cool. It's definitely something that I've been giving some thought to, but again, like that's a big undertaking because it's a very different type of design.
Yeah, it's both thinking about what the pricing for those are, but also like what is available in that space. You know, what
Yeah.
the size of it is, how many hooks it has, how cozy is how cozy is too cozy, how small is too small. You know, I think there are a couple of great locations in the game that can like fit apartment style housing into it. In fact, when I first started back on LotRO after my hiatus, one of my first tasks was to kind of revise the landscape of Breland in preparation for the launch of the Legendary servers. And so I tackled the mountains around Breetown and kind of pulled them down. And as part of that, I built out a little section of Breetown that I was like keeping in my pocket, thinking like one of these days, apartment housing or kinship housing, great spot for one of those things. Um, and so like it's something that we've had in our head for a long time. I think Breland is, Breetown housing is a great opportunity for style housing. Somewhere in Umbar uh, is a great opportunity, in large part because those uh, building assets are very amenable to that style of home. As I bash into my table, yay!
No injuries.
We'll
It's a
see.
question and answer, not an injury and answer.
Alex Argo asks, have you considered implementing an upgradable? Players can start with a small house or expand or upgrade it into larger homes and invest in the game. Yes.
Yes, that is a whole housing loop.
Again, I've joked and alluded to the long game, but we do want to find ways to, we know that housing is a very the phrase we often use is sticky gameplay concept, right? It's something that compels players to stay in the game, to stay in the world. It is something that becomes a part of the player as they amass their collection, they customize their space. And visual customization is, one vector of advancement. But there are other ways that we can think about advancing a player's experience with housing that isn't just purely decorative. And that's some of the stuff that, that Serafina and Alan and myself have talked about thinking about doing as part of the future of housing. And
yeah, like what else could you do? Yeah, no timetable, absolutely not. But like, what else could you do that's not just decor? And what else can that space provide? Because like again, coming from my perspective of psychology, like yeah, housing has a lot of features in it that speak to a number of styles of play that are very different from each other. And being able to like allow that and encourage it is super important, and finding ways to support that I think is a definite goal. But obviously that is a whole extra gameplay loop and gameplay focus, and that's a lot.
Are there any plans about letting players have more than one standard house? Yes, we have a, much like the additional kinship house, we have that on our list. We know that the current kind of gameplay style around like people owning a home is something that some people find really compelling, and the way they have to go about doing that is not the most fun way to go about doing that. So it's something that we want to make those original neighborhoods a bit more extensible for players and a little bit more easy to access multiples within those neighborhoods as well. Let's see, we talked about the hook types that are going to be in Rivendell.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't going to be any new hook types, though. What's the current practice for creation of new neighborhoods? Certain types sold out or the neighborhoods full. I know that it's a subject with the Waterfall House in Lindleby, and so we have a system in place that will automatically roll out new neighborhood instances based off of how populated existing neighborhoods are. Generally, that is looking at kinship house in the neighborhood and number of houses total that are purchased in that neighborhood. We're not really taking chase houses into consideration. whether or not that's something we need to go back and reevaluate, up for debate. But the way it currently exists right now is those stately houses, the special houses, are considered part of the general house pool when it comes to the system determining whether or not to open up new neighborhood instances.
Are balconies feasible for homesteads? Asked in
Unless we have a very different way of managing our system, I am not confident in providing balconies in a way that is satisfactory to players.
Yeah, I need idea. I just don't think it's. I would agree. It would be a little hard into the current system.
So we are running close on time now. So I don't know, Yao, would like us to go on a little bit further. I have a few more minutes that I can spare before other meetings spin up.
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Or if there are any other big questions that you might have, or that we might have, as we've been going through the channels, that feel like they are yearning to be answered.
I'll just do a quick shout out. Creep housing. That's a cool idea. That'd be neat. Drug. And I mean that in like the best way possible of, yeah, that was definitely something that's been thought of. But as to what if that would happen, no news now.
Let's see. I'm trying to do a quick scan to see if there's anything that will jump out at me.
I feel like a lot of these questions are dancing around like the long-term plans for housing.
Yeah, and again, maybe we just have this our high-level goals and objectives for the housing system for neighborhoods going forward. I think we both have our goals and objectives with what we want to accomplish. I know there are no shortage of places that people want to live in, so I think I will always have a new neighborhood to consider building. But I think our big thing is wanting to find ways to give players more opportunities to express themselves within the housing spaces, whether it is through decoration, through how they manipulate the decorations, or through gameplay loops that are associated with the housing system. I think those are kind of like the big things that, at least from my perspective, I'm hoping to accomplish with the system. And then as far as how we achieve that, I think in you all engaging with the housing system, giving us the data that shows that it is a popular system, it is a system that people stick around for, is a very compelling way for us to make the case, make the pitch that, like, hey, if we do this, then we are pretty sure we are going to be able to get this much back from our investment into it. Whether that getting back is player positivity, player satisfaction, monetary. There are a lot of components that go into making something useful. And the more engagement players have with the system, the more they show us what they can do with it, what they like about it, what they'd like to change about it, the more we can make the case for feature X, feature Y, feature Z, and getting those on a timetable that is going to make everyone happy.
And I will take 2 last questions. I'll do Alex Argo's question in general quick, and I see Yao tossed me a question in specific. And Alex Argos was, how did the LotRO team react to the World of Warcraft housing introduction? I congratulated all my friends because they're our friends. And some of them worked on LotRO. So yeah, they're awesome, and really happy that their game is also getting a visit from housing after a very long time. But yeah, like there are definitely folks that you know from LotRO who are currently working on WoW right now. And the other question was, would we consider refunding homesteading coins for premium houses that got abandoned when a player stopped playing for a while? That is a larger question. And that's always a hard one because I go back and forth on this a lot, where we want the housing system to be friendly and encouraging and let it be a good experience for as long as you're using it. But also, there needs to be some sort of pressure on it, as we've been talking about in other areas, because there's only so much of it that can exist at one time. And increasing that is always a question of technology, server, storage, and a whole bunch of other internal components. So balancing those two things together is always difficult. And what that system does when it kicks back funds, like, is that always something that it should be doing, is a question that's always on my mind. Is it something we want it to? Yes. Like, I think it would be something that is a better experience for the player, so that way when they come back, they can pick up or try and get back into the housing system and don't feel like they're completely locked out of it. And that's important. But also keeping it on the other side of where it has a bit of pressure that it requires people to be actively using it and engaged, and that way you're not walking past houses that are sitting there not doing anything, and then you can't get to them, you can't have them, etc. So yeah, I think the refund, especially like for homesteading coins, yeah, I think that it would eventually fall under like normal refund rules, or like what the refund rules look like. But also that's up to, I think, a larger conversation as a whole, because like right now we're still doing like the 100% right now.
Yep.
Matt. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be revisited, after we get past the transfer.
Unless you see a question that you want to answer, I think we're good.
There are certainly no shortage of questions, and hopefully we are able to touch on most of them, or in the general concept of most of them. Thank you all for asking your questions. Thank you, Yao, for hosting the conversation.
And thank you both
I'll probably
for being here.
bounce in and answer some questions in text afterwards too. But I have another meeting to run too.
Okay. Well, we are off to our meetings, so thank you everyone for hanging out.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm always happy to talk about housing. So
Thanks,
Yes,
everyone.
have a great day, y'all.